So, Brian, thanks a million for joining me on the podcast. I got to jump straight in off the bat here. Of obviously we know each other. We grew up in the same town, in the same class in school, and I think I'm fascinated because I see so much of your posts on LinkedIn. All you're doing with your podcast, the broker brunch, but as well all like the kind of the knowledge and stuff that you've learned from real estate in New York. So I suppose the question is, how does someone from a small town in the Midlands of Ireland end up, out in the Big Apple there and getting into like real estate, into like I can only imagine is a hyper competitive, tough world that a lot of people are going to churn out.
Yeah, Gary, cheers for having me on. And it definitely, I wish I could say it was easy, but it certainly wasn't. And it's it's a road that's been a hard traveled road, but it's definitely it's showing signs of reward. And I think whatever you're doing in life, if it's going to be worthwhile, or if you feel like it's worth spending your time on, then it's worth going all in on. And I think that's one thing that I've done is that I I saw a lot of people dip their toes in and they don't make it. And in this specific business, in sales or commercial real estate, which is what I do, it's all about reward and it's all about your ability to grind and hang in. And it's less about what college you went to, or it's less about what kind of schools you went to, or what family you're from. It's all about how much you can put into it, how much you're willing to suffer, and how much you're willing to just grind to get to where you need to go. Because a lot of people want the same thing, and there's no easy way of doing it, you know. And I
Definitely.
think thanks for the shout out, and same to you. I mean, it's amazing. We did go to the same school. We hung out as friends, and it's so cool to see what you're doing with the podcast with Dark Finds. I'm scratching my head here because you asked me to come on, and when I'm listening to your podcast, I'm talking about like cult leaders and CEO to cell block, and then you asked Brian Whelan to come on. So I'm waiting for some sort of boogie trap here.
No, like I think the way the podcast it kind of started out, it was probably going to go more true crime-ish because it just naturally dovetailed with the book and with the Instagram. But I think it kind of went through like almost a makeover probably over the last year, where it was like I changed the kind of tagline to, some stories just hit different, and it's like trying to find that story. Like I think where I'm kind of going with it now is to find them really interesting stories that kind of slip a bit out of the norm. And like I think real estate, like from an Irish guy in a small rural town, going out and like taking on that challenge, taking in that risk, taking in that pressure, like that's the kind of story I want to figure out. I want to figure out that mindset. I want to kind of understand it. And I think that's where I get value when I'm reading a book, about someone that did something, that pushed through a challenge, pushed through the barriers. I get so motivated by that. Like I think
Yeah,
we were saying off camera there with, with your podcast with Sean Ripney, where he's just talking, the churnout rate is so high. I think he was talking about the 1% of the 1%, but it's them people that just kept going. And it's like sometimes I need that kick up the ass to just keep going. And I think, definitely, because I can imagine with real estate in New York, like what is the churnout rate like? Is it like, or where's the pressure coming from? Actually, let's start there, Brian. Like, what is it? Is it the rejection deals? Is it trying to, all the, doing so much outreach, getting nothing back? Is it following up, chasing? Where is the kind of pressure cooker simming from?
I think it's all of the above. Everything you mentioned there. I always feel like it's not even about competing against other brokers or other people. It's really about competing against yourself. Like, how do you wake up in the morning when you're making no money? You've been doing it for a year or two, and you have to go in and literally pick up the phone to people who don't know you, don't want to hear from you, and you have to try and make something happen because there's no paychecks, there's no reward for second place. You either get the deal, you close it, or you don't. And I think the reason why a lot of folks don't make it, it's not because I did anything exceptional. I think I really, if there's anything I did that was extraordinary, it was just my ability to withhold. And we will probably talk a bit about growing up, where we grew up. And I don't know if I was born with grit. I don't think I was, and you can probably relate to this. I heard you speak to it about, school it was like such a different time. And I just, as young men or young boys, you're really you're trying to find your way in the world. And I think if I was to go back to growing up, so it was the same as yourself, we played sports, went to school. I think we had ability, and it was probably not always applied, but I think we got through, and we made the best of it. But I think it was later in life, like for me from Mount Malik, I graduated in 2009, so it was went to college in Galway and finished up in '09, and it was really like a unbelievable time to
Yeah.
graduate. And you can recall this as well, I'm sure. It was just like the whole world was in front of us, and then all of a sudden the rug was just pulled from underneath us. So it was like I was never going to be handy or good with my hands, and a lot of our friends went on to do really well. You make money straight away. You serve your time as an apprentice, whether it's on the building site or as an electrician, whatever it was. There was a real pathway for a lot of our friends to go and crush it very quickly, and a lot of them did. But for us who, if you weren't into working with your hands or you just didn't have that skill set, really like college and finding my way in business was going to be how I had to do it. So after getting a business degree, I realized I knew nothing about business, right? And that's the messed up thing about college is you go there, hands up in the air. I dove into the party life and just couldn't believe the freedom I had, and I had very little interest in studying, and then in the last year of college, after just kind of scraping my way through, just this light bulb started flickering that this is my ticket. This is my pathway to make something of myself, and I have to take it serious. So I really did knuckle down in that last year, and I thankfully did well in the exams, got what I needed to do, got my degree. But like I said, so you finish, it's '09, the world changes. We didn't have a clue about cycles or what happens in economic downturn because this was our first go around. It was all we knew. For both of us growing up, we grew up good families. I don't think we wanted for anything. You go on holidays once a year. It was great. And but now all of a sudden there's no college to fall back on. No one wants to hire me. I think the first two interviews I did after college, one was for a bin disposal company selling subscriptions. Didn't get it. Second one was McDonald's, which was opening up in Portlaoise, and that was like, it's mad to think there was no McDonald's in the area. It's like talking about a different time, but they opened up the restaurant, and I threw in my CV, and I was really like, it was kind of like begrudgingly. I was just like, how is this happening? And I went to the interview, and it was this massive like conference room. There was about 300 people there, all like
Sign of the times then.
people who had tile companies, carpenters, guys like me, just out of college, people just finished school, not going to college, everyone. And it was just this, like, I remember just looking around, and like those jobs I feel like they're not supposed to be permanent jobs or full time, right? They're for people who are passing through or for summer jobs. And I was like, there has to be something else. This can't be it. So thankfully I got the opportunity to go to America. My uncle was over here and he was building apartments, and he said, come on over. He was in Oregon. He took me in, he was building apartments. I was working for him, and he was just paying me cash, and I got to learn how to ski. I got to see a different part of the world. And I think that was really the start of opening my mind up to, you can go do things. And it's not that people can't do things in Ireland, but for me, it was just that change of landscape, change of scenery that really kind of sparked that first idea that there was so much out there and you could really, really do it if you want to do it. So I was there in Oregon. I did that, and on my way out to Oregon, I stopped in New York. So I had family friends that were here, and they really changed my life. So Aisling was a friend of mine at the time, and then her mom and dad, Margaret and Tony. It was literally like in New York, there's these waves of immigration, and they had done it in the 80s, and they saw that what was happening in '08, '09. So they really opened up the door and were like, listen, if you ever want to come to New York, if you ever wanted to try stay, we'll do everything we can to help you. So, I stayed going on my travels, ended up in Australia. I was working in a bar with a few of our friends, and, I was living a good life. It was kind of what to
Yeah.
do when you're 21. And I got an email from Tony Whelan, who was in New York, and he said, listen, I have a company and a job just came up as an assistant for me. And if you're interested, we'd love to try and make it happen. I was on the next flight to New York because I
Oh,
just
yeah.
knew that there was something about New York that it was my vibe. There was hustle. There was just a
Yeah.
ceiling there that I felt like was much higher than anywhere else I've seen. So I went there and thankfully it all worked out. I worked for Tony for a few years. I just felt like I needed to get some sort of corporate experience. I started working with JP Morgan and I went on from there then to get involved in commercial real estate. For me, the corporate was just not a good fit. I needed action. I needed to have some sort of hustle that I felt like I was in an entrepreneurial endeavor. And commercial real estate really is that, in my opinion. I don't think there's anything else out there like it where that's left anyway, where it's literally you wake up in the morning, you go and try and make something happen. If you make nothing happen, then nothing happens for you. But you're always one call away from changing your life. And I think it's like a drug. It's like once you
Yeah.
get sucked into that environment that there's something major you're about to do, or there's a life-changing thing that could happen if you can just land this deal, make that relationship, close that deal, and you just get ignited by it. And I think a lot of folks have it within them. They mightn't even realize they have it, but
Yeah.
they need to get it turned on. And for me, it was about being in that environment. And I think that environment really ignites something within me. Sorry if that went way off on a tangent.
No, no, that's and like what's so interesting there is that kind of you have to chase that opportunity thing. Like I think it's a Gordon Gekko quote out of Wall Street where it's like money never sleeps. But I think for certain individuals, it's like opportunity never sleeps. Like it's not like because money isn't like it is a dopamine hit, but opportunity, like the chance of something hitting big, is a massive dopamine rush. So it's like, and I got for a while I was like this outreach and just doing everything that where it was like the ping of an email was just so like you just feel a surge.
Yeah.
And it's because anything, like it could have been, something with the book. It could have been, a guest for the show. It could have been anything. But you almost become like, there's an addiction to that, like, opportunity because you don't know what it's going to flow into. Where, like, I think money is definitely, I think that's a good measure of working and like doing out your time, stuff like that. But it's the opportunity of something could come true. Now, some people will absolutely despise that. They need certainty. They need routine. They can't maybe they don't have that proactive ability. And so, like, was that there in you, or was that something that like New York pulled out of you? Because I find when I went to Canada, it completely changed who I was. And I lived in Toronto. I came back a completely different man. I think that was 2010. It would have been probably the same time you were roughly going to New York. But yeah, did New York drag that out of you, do you think?
You hit on something interesting there. So you went to Toronto and you felt like it changed. I went to New York. I wonder, is it just, it's not necessarily the city and it's more about the change or the contrast, especially when you're young and you're at that impressionable age that
Yeah.
can just open up different parts of your mind.
And do you know
I
what it is? It could be something that you said there a minute ago as well, that like you just felt the sea. Like I think Mount Mellick is for a brilliant place and all, but for the ceiling is small. And I think you said there a moment ago that like New York, the ceiling you looked up probably and it was nearly endless. Like the possibility and the opportunity was endless. And I think that I felt like that in Toronto as well. I'd never been exposed to such. I think the buildings are almost an analogy for it. I'd never seen skyscrapers so big, and it's almost like your ambition can go just as lofty. And I think it activated something in me. I felt, but it could have been just having all these experiences. I tasted sushi. I was like, what is this?
Yeah, and you're probably surrounding yourself with people who have done something similar and moved themselves from one part of the world to the other. And I think with that comes, you have to be very willing to take a risk or a bet. And then all of a sudden you're around all these people who are very like-minded, and it probably just compounds that growth mindset that anything is possible. We're all here away from home. We've nothing to lose. I suppose it's that nothing to lose type of mentality. Like, as bad as things get business wise, I think as an immigrant, you always have the I'm playing with house money mentality, because you come here with nothing, right? And maybe somewhere in the back of my mind, it's always in there that could all end up being nothing at the end of it all. But really, you're not afraid of that because you've been there. Whereas I wonder if you're growing up in a New York family with high expectations, or any family with high expectations, it almost feels like there's more downside than upside, if you know what I mean, because
Yeah.
it's people have already carved the path,
It's
and
expected. Like,
it's
because
expected.
when there's something expected, it's like, just even case in point, like Cork were so expected to win there in the All Ireland and just fell apart. Like, sometimes I think people fear success or fear winning or fear like that. The fear almost, I think, to let the idea into their head that, we could win or we could succeed. And it's like what it takes then to get that, because like it's the crushing disappointment of it not happening then.
And I think if you like the Cork example, or any football team or hurling team that are favourites to win something, I think you start playing within yourself when something is expected of you. Like, if you hear any of like the great legends in sport, momentum is a very funny thing, and it's a slow build, but once you have it, it's almost impossible to stop. So like, when you're playing defensively, so we're talking about you've something to lose, or a team that is a favorite, you play totally different, right? You play very cautiously, conservatively. All of a sudden, what you're playing against, they have nothing to lose, and they're just playing free spirited. The shackles are off, and I think that mindset for any immigrant or for any person that's on a mission to do something, when the shackles are thrown off and there's really nothing to lose, you really can stare any challenge in the face and say, like, I'm going to go through this, because there's nothing really to stop yourself, only yourself.
Yeah. And get like people get in their own way. And here's the thing then as well, because like you had a great LinkedIn post there recently where I was like, first year you make nothing. Second year, I think, like, this is as a broker. Second year, you make pittance, and then it kind of gets better, and then, okay, it gets good after around year 5. You said it very more eloquently than I did there, but it is a great post. And I think you made a great point that, like, a lot of apprentices as well, also, if you want to be a carpenter, you're 4 years of kind of shitty enough wage before you get to it. But it's weird because, like, more than likely you would have already done college, so you think you're paying your dues, but you're not. But in them first 3 years where you're just probably getting rejected, it's not working, you're still trying to figure out how does this beast of kind of real estate work. Like, why not give up and go into something? I go back to accountancy. I'll go, JP Morgan there. I'll go back there. What kept you? What kept you going? Like, what was the carrot in front of you that you were still chasing?
Trying to think back to what that was. I mean, there was definitely the smart thing to do would have been to stay in a corporate job and not have the stresses and everything else. But I think that, so I'll tell you a story. All right. So I'm at JP Morgan, right? And I'm a few weeks into it, and it's all, desks everywhere. It's very quiet. This guy gets up and he starts walking around and shaking hands with people. And he comes around to me, and I was fairly new at the time, and shakes my hand. And I was like, what's going on? Oh, he's like, oh, today's my last day. And I was like, oh, wow, fair play. Like, how long were you here? He goes, 40 years. And I looked at him and I was like, so what's the plan now? And he was like, oh, that's it now for me. I'm done. Today's my last day. I was like, is there any party, or are we doing anything, or, do you get a nice watch even? And he was like, no, 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 no. Like, the budgets are tight, but I had a good career. I don't know, something about that just, it put the fear of
Hollowness.
God in me, that I was like, that can't be me. It can't be me. If that's what it's about. And some people, like, that's fine, and they have other priorities in life. It might be that safety makes them feel more secure in the
Yeah.
world, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it lit a fire under me. I got out of there very fast. I started doing crazy stuff like so I played on a football team. That GA is a fantastic thing around the world because it's not necessarily about the sports, it's about the community you can build away from home, especially away from home. But I was playing on a football team and everyone there was young guys from Ireland looking to find apartments. So I was like, let me figure out how to rent apartments. So the guys on my football team are like the easiest clients ever because they were like, oh, Whelan, I want to move to Midtown and I have a budget of a few thousand, what can you find? I would just literally go online, find exactly what they were looking for, call up whoever the broker was and say, listen, I have a client, we want to go see it. I'd go see it with them, 5 o'clock, we'd sign the lease. And all of a sudden I was making like a few $1,000s here, a few $1,000s there. I was like, is this even legal? Like, is this like, like it seems like too easy. But I got the bug that way. I think for seeing that it could be done professionally and reading about it, and the good thing about over here in real estate, there's no shortage of heroes. And for me, it was always important to have a hero or someone to emulate because I wasn't someone that was necessarily intrinsically motivated. These people who don't need anything, they're born with that just killer instinct, and for me, it was more like I needed to see what was out there, and then that kind of drove me on. I guess everybody's different, but yeah, so I got into it that way. I Googled the top 10 commercial real estate firms in New York. None of them would hire me, and then I had
Serious?
no
Like,
experience.
why? What was the drawback, do you think?
It's
Or
just like
experience?
and you're saying you're going to make it, but we hear that every day and we don't care, and go away, get some experience. And I was like, I'm working in a coffee shop here. Like,
how do you get experience?
Yeah, like you won't give me a shot. But one guy did, JD Parker of Marcus and Millichap, and he had an affinity for immigrants because his wife was from England. He had already hired one of my really good buddies who's from Mullingar, coincidentally, Alan Stenson. And so there was already he was like, these Irish guys are funny, like
And
they'll
if
come
you
in.
Stenson's that into the template there.
Exactly. So he was in there, and then it was easier for JD to give me a shot. So all of a sudden he had 2 Irish guys out in the bullpen that were banging the phones for him. So when you go in there, it's a pretty cool experience, especially coming from where I came from, because I'd never been exposed to it. So you're sitting in the middle of a massive, we call it a bullpen. So it's where the junior brokers are. And all around it, there's senior brokers, and they have glass offices. So you're literally in this fishbowl, and you're looking every 5 minutes at exactly where you want to be. Guys in $1,000 suits and doing deals in their offices, and you're like, I need to get into one of those offices, and it's going to but in order to get into one of the offices, you need to make a lot of money for the firm and for your mentor. So you can imagine there's serious burnout, and guys come in, and I've seen a lot of guys come and go, and I'm convinced you can't tell who's going to make it until you're in the situation, because people come in like guns blazing. They're going to make it. They look great. They feel great. They sound great. And all of a sudden, 6 months in, I don't know what happens, but the girlfriend says something to them, or parents say something, or they start seeing their friends making money and getting ahead, and they just lose their, like I said, that momentum. It slips away very quickly. You take too long a holiday. You start getting complacent with your follow-ups. All of a sudden, everything starts slipping away from you.
Yeah.
And you're very quickly out of the business. So I think that staying really, really focused, I used to get up in the morning and do crazy stuff. Like I was reading books. I was so paranoid about failing that I had to keep telling myself, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it. So I'd get up in the morning at 5 a.m. and I was reading this book called The Miracle Morning, where you do 10 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes of mindfulness, 10 minutes of a workout, 10 minutes of telling yourself, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make
10 coffees.
So you're brainwashing yourself, and you become this animal that is just working outside of their own body almost. So every morning I would get up and I would say, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it. And you just start walking that walk. You don't even notice yourself doing it, but a year into it, you're like, okay, I made it a year. Then it's like, I made no money. like I said in that LinkedIn post, a small amount of money, just enough to give you a taste to keep going.
Yeah.
And then you're ready and you're like, okay, year 2, I'm going to make it big. This is my year. And then it doesn't happen in year 2. And you're like, oh my God. And you're after selling the story to your wife, your girlfriend, your parents, or whoever. And you're like,
Oh
I'm
man, I
going to
know
make
the
it. I'm going to
feeling.
make it. And then I made the exact same money in year 2. And all of a sudden, the doubt was there. And I was looking at some guys had popped quickly. Some guys had popped out of it. It was, a mix, and you're not sure where you're going to fall in that. But I met a guy called Paul Massey, and he's a kind of a legend of New York City real estate. He had started a company, sold it for $100 million 4 or 5 years earlier, and he was starting this 2.0 of that company he had done. I met with him, and he's a very good, like you talk about human behavior and everything. It's not even his knowledge of real estate or business, it's his knowledge of people and being able to read people. And he took a look at me. I looked terrible, 2 years in, and probably the same suit for the last 5 days, bags under my eyes, like pressure, stress, just a stress ball.
Trash.
Going home for Christmas, you know how it is. You come home, you're delighted to see your friends, your family, and you want to be like that person who's out there and
100%,
doing
man.
it. And all of a sudden, you know that you're not doing it. And it's, you have to come home and face those demons. But he said, listen, give it one more year. You're almost there. Like, one more year. Just join me, come in here. It'll be a new start. And I did. And he, delivered on his promise. Six
And was that
months in.
Ripco?
So that was B6 real estate. So I was at
B6.
B6 this is 2019.
29. Oh,
So
Jesus. Yeah.
it was like 20, my timing in life is unbelievable. Everything that happens to me, there's something around the corner. So 2019, so I build up a really good pipeline there. I find my groove. I make enough money in year 3 to pay down some of my bills, pay off some debt. And, I started proving the concept that I deserve to be here. And then I made a hire. She was great. And now all of a sudden I had a little team, had a good brand that was being built. Clients started to recognize me. The Irish accent was super helpful, because you can imagine, in a field where everyone sounds and looks the same, if you have something, especially if it's an accent and you're like doing a lot of calls,
Yeah.
that little thing to stand out. Oh, my grandfather was from Ireland, or
Yeah.
this, that, and you just
Rapport
pounce
builder.
on it. Because it's like, we all have to play the hand we're dealt. Someone else just might be very slick, they might be very smart, they might be, just an excellent communicator. But if you have something that is easy for people, just lean into it, and there's no like skill with any of that. That's just luck. That's just like playing the hand you're dealt. But
Yeah.
it was a big help to having the Irish accent, as silly as that sounds. And I started really getting recognition with clients, started getting some bigger quality deals. And then it's March 2020, and we're in the office and we're having our pipeline meeting. And someone says something about like this virus that was coming around, and, it's getting kind of serious. I think it was in the background for a couple of months, but it was like, remember like bird flu or foot and mouth?
Yeah.
You're just like, this is just something that's going to run its course. But the next morning, we were told not to come into the office. And then all of a sudden, the phone started ringing with clients. We need to cancel our deal. We need to cancel this deal. So I built up a pipeline of, I was going to make like 6 figures in the next few months. And it was like all about paying back like a lot of money that I had like scraped together to get by. And finally, I was going to get some reward. And then all of my deals went, and everything fell apart, and the pipeline went back to zero. And I was told to stay at home for the foreseeable, because you can't come into the office, you can't come into the city. My son JJ was after being born, so I had a 6-month son. All of a sudden it was just like, now I'm on, at that point, year 4, and again we're back to zero. And it was just like, when you just start thinking, maybe this is a sign from the universe that this is just not meant to be. Like, I do need to print out that CV and go get a job like any other normal person. But I don't know. Then, hunker down for a couple of months, reset, got a break and told myself to cop on. Like,
Like,
this
how
is not,
quiet was it then when COVID? Like, was there was nothing moving? You couldn't even go and
city
look
was
at
empty.
listings.
City was empty. Like, it was, and you were kind of like, again, like just like the financial crisis, I'd never seen anything like this. I don't think most people had. This was something different. So you kind of do start believing, like, oh, maybe the city will never come back. But not in the
You've
sell.
nothing to base it off.
So it was again another inflection point, and you can probably relate to this with all of your different endeavors that you did. You reach a lot of inflection points about I need to change this or this needs to be nuanced, and then all of a sudden you come up with a new system, and then you're back to the races again. So I was back in the office. I doubled down. I said I'm not going to let this pandemic stop me. I did it once. I did it twice. I can do it again. So I built everything back up, and that took another couple of years. And thankfully, got through and got to the other side of it. And there was a ton more other bumps and bruises along the way. But I just wrote those stories as like different examples of times you could stop or maybe you should stop. But for whatever reason, you just find a way and you keep going.
Well, like I think, and again, it's work because reading your profile on Ripco, it's 50 deals and 170 million, dollars brought in across that, like which is absolutely incredible. And when you're thinking that it nearly fell down a few times, like where it's starting to get going. Like I think from my own thing, like just I wanted to be a writer so much. Get the book done. But it was only when it got published, I felt that for the first time, I wasn't that kind of like imposter that I was an aspiring. Because the thing is, you can be an aspiring something your entire life, but actually, feeling it. But then it actually it starts like to fill out your identity. Your whole identity becomes around and being, for me, it was kind of more around writing. For some people, it's like getting signed to the soccer team. Then and man, it's such an elevator change. But like, where was the deal? What was the point there where you felt like I'm a real estate guy or I'm a broker now? Where it actually felt like, was it a deal? Was it something someone said? Was it just everything forming into one?
It was a bit bittersweet, to be honest, because it was I fast forward a little bit, and so B6 we left B6 and I partnered up with another guy from London, Mitchell Flaherty, and that's my partner today, and we've a team of 6 and we're doing great, and things are coming together. And I think maybe being honest with yourself about what skill sets you have and what you don't, and make sure that you link up with people that have what you don't have. And for me, like Mitchell he's the perfect complement to my personality, but we also have that he's from London and his dad was from Ireland, his mom's from Germany, he grew up in London. So we were here with that. He came a few years after me, but very much like a driven guy. He's hugely ambitious and very much the same mentality of like, I have nothing to lose, but I have to make this work because I've sacrificed so much by leaving my family, leaving where I grew up, leaving everything I know, that I can't give all that up just for something that's not big or huge or exceptional. So we kind of clicked on that point. And yeah, he's more introverted than I am. He's laser focused on getting deals done. He's like a silent assassin, and just the perfect complement to me, where I love originating new business. I love going out, like bringing in the business or making relationships or going out for lunch with someone, and probably similar to yourself, really like learning what makes them tick, because I just find that fascinating. Whereas Mitch is like an unbelievable broker in terms of being able to move deals along and finding the right buyer for the right deal. And I think together we've stumbled upon some sort of formula that works for us, and I think that's probably a big part too, that you have to be open to change, and maybe sometimes creating a pie, even though now you're sharing the spoils or sharing the profits, all of a sudden you can create a much bigger pie than you ever imagined by partnering up or finding the yin to your yang, finding someone who can bring something to it that you can't. Because if you try to be all things to all people, you'll end up just being nobody to everybody.
Yeah, that's so true, and it's finding the right partner at the right time as well. Like that's the huge thing, and then grow. Like, so how does it work? Like, so because what I get from it, from listening to your podcast and stuff like that, is like, even though you almost work like as entrepreneurial pods kind of within this like umbrella company, like where you kind of have your free reign to go chase wherever, like, there's all different teams, but you're kind of nearly like you manage your own pie, is it?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the way you described it is actually it. So you have your own business within a business, right? So when you're a broker, you hang your license with a brokerage, right? And so I go and I find a building to sell, right? The owner of the building hires me to sell the building. I go find a buyer for them. I get paid then a commission when the deal closes, when on the day that the deal sells from the seller to the buyer. And say for every $100 that commission is, I give a share to the brokerage.
Yeah,
So
so they
I'll
take the
take my
rate.
share, the brokerage takes their share. I share it out then with my team, because we're all on agreements with each other that everyone gets paid based on their involvement in the deal. The brokerage makes their money, and in return we get the brand, offices here where I am today, collaboration with other teams, that kind of thing. So it's very much your own team first, and then you operate under a much bigger umbrella, but you decide what you do day to day. You decide how the compensation is split among your team after you split with the house. And that's super high level how a brokerage team operate and how they get paid.
Yeah, like it's so interesting because there's kind of multiple levels, because you're hunting for the seller, but you're hunting for the buyer then as well. Like when you were back in the bullpen, like were you given lists like, here's potential sellers, here's potential buyers, like, or was it, no manual, you're in, like, you're just picking up the phone, like who are you ringing at this stage? Back now in the early days.
So in the early days, it was very much what type of property are we trying to sell? So you would create lists of the type of property, and it could be, I'm going to focus on hotels, or I'm going to focus on apartment buildings, or I'm going to focus on land. And whatever you do when you start, I really think specialization is the key, because if you're not specialized, when you think about it, when you come in and you're starting, you have no real knowledge, skills, value to offer, right? You're dealing with people who are in the business 50 years, own these buildings. They've been doing deals since before you were born. So when you're a young kid calling them, asking them for a meeting, why would they meet with you?
Yeah, why?
You know,
That's the
and
question.
and that's why if you're a specialist, so even though you're 6 months into the business, if you're able to tell them, listen, I know I'm young, I know that you've been doing this long before I was around, but I am obsessed with this market and with buildings just like yours that are selling in your neighborhood. And all I'm doing is tracking these numbers. I know exactly who's buying them. I know the metrics that people are selling for. I have all the information. I want to buy you a cup of coffee. Don't want to do business with you today, but I'm thinking long term, you're going to need me, because I'm going to be out there and I'm going to be able to bring you deals. I'm going to be able to bring a buyer for your building or find you a building that you want to buy. Meet me for 5 minutes and I'll go through everything I have. And usually, like, folks can kind of sense, like, listen, give this kid a shot. Like, he's obviously organized. For whatever reason, he's focused on my type of building. Let me just see what it is. And 9 times out of 10, you get that meeting and you meet with someone face to face, people are very, very good, I find. And they're very good at seeing that someone is working hard. They were there once. Maybe you remind them of someone, maybe themselves, maybe their kid, maybe their nephew. And all of a sudden they're like, go on, like, yeah, here, I'm not selling it today, but let's talk in a month or 2 months. And then all of a sudden you create a rapport. I've never walked out of a meeting without leaving it in a better place than I started it. Just that people don't want to be mean to each other, usually, I find. That human connection face to face, it's so much harder for someone to actually put you down or to just be nasty. And I think people sometimes, when they might be afraid of rejection. right? And they might be afraid that this person is going to reject them, whether it's dating, whether it's business, whatever it is. But there's something very attractive about someone who's just willing to put themselves in the firing line and take whatever shots are given, because the shots usually don't come. It's usually in your head.
Yeah.
Right, the night before you might be thinking, "Oh my God, I'm so unqualified for this," or "This person's going to see right through me," or
And the thing is with it, Brian, like that, it makes so much sense from an evolutionary perspective. Like that sort of like wiring and coding in our brain it kept us alive for so many years, because to be able to see that every potential downfall is what kept you alive when you were going hunting big game on the Serengeti. You know, trying to imagine the lion is going to eat you, what angle he's going to attack from. That that sort of neural wiring it kept us alive. But what happens now is it's probably not as productive sometimes when you're going into like a meeting like that, and like some people will take it where they're deprecating instead of like looking at like potential downfalls. It's nearly self-character assassinations. And again, I think that's just part of the old circuitry in the modern world. But
did you feel like that when you were going through writing the books, or like even doing this podcast? Like, you're someone who I feel like has been brave with your decisions in terms of like going down the path that's not very, very worn and seeing where it takes you. Did you have to overcome something similar to persevere through what felt like probably very, very uncomfortable territory, I'm sure?
yeah, and like naturally, I think I have a high appetite for risk. So I think like that's the only thing. I think everything else, and like it's just sticking at something. Like the rejection, man. If you like, I have an idea where I want to decorate like this wall over here and just all the rejection letters for everything, because I think it's like the instinct to just give up was so strong, because it's like, this is just silly. Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm wasting, like, in my head, I was thinking, like, I'm wasting so much time I could actually put into setting up a business, setting up a little marketing agency there. I'm wasting the best years of my life trying to, write books that I can't sell and that, like, I keep getting rejected from. So then you start, like, doubting, like, this is the stupidest thing. What am I doing? But the thing I had to bring it back to completely was the difference between the extrinsic motivation and intrinsic. And the extrinsic, man, is me getting up to write simply because I want to get a paycheck out of it, which again is a motivator for a lot of people. But I think the intrinsic motivation was so much deeper, that it was like, I write because there's something inside me that wants to write, that like, if there's never going to be, the way I had to get it into my head, if there's never going to be a penny at the end of the rainbow, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to turn up every day and write. Kind of brought that exact same philosophy into the podcasting as well. Like, I couldn't believe the first person got back and said they'd come on it. I was like, shit, right, now I need to go get all the equipment and stuff like that. I completely chanced my arm. And again, the way I went with it was, I'm just going to keep reaching out to people. Like, sometimes you'll hear back, sometimes you won't. Sometimes people, just like don't want to come on, or like they don't want to go on podcasts or whatever. But it's kind of treating it with that same philosophy or that same ethos. It's just, if it never makes a penny, if it doesn't do that, and I just enjoy chatting to people, hearing like your story and any of the guests that come on. I just find it interesting. I find a reward at the end of it personally. Like, I feel more inspired, or I've learned something that will ping a thought maybe in 3 years. I'd be like, oh, and it'll make some connection, and it'll help me out with some situation, or it'll sharpen my focus for something else. So yeah, that's kind of the
That's
ethos.
a beautiful thing. Like, when you can say that it's not even about any reward. If this was it, that you don't get anything other than your time with people, or your time to express yourself in a book, that's the reward. And I think anyone who's doing anything that they're going to hang in there and be exceptional at, or do anything long term, they need to have that mindset that if I never made any reward, I would still do this. Because how else do you keep going at something?
Yeah. And it's the only way, because if not, the cognitive dissonance will just be so crippling. And it nearly was for me, until I kind of had that paradigm shift where it's like, it was almost, I was regretting, like, I was in the future regretting back that I was like, oh, you wasted all this opportunity when you could have like, set up a business or, did something more entrepreneurial. But it's like it was the wrong way to think about it. It was like, because I could hate that anyway, and that could fail even worse.
Right.
But the whole
Yeah.
thing is, it's just that intrinsic motivation, man. And we learned that in like psychology 101, pretty much, like that big difference. And I think it's what defines a lot of people at the start, to break through them kind of churn barriers. Like you mentioned it there with the bullpen and, the people churning out after 6 months. And they're probably, again, families are going to be like, the mom and dad will be like, you're not making money, you're so stressed, get out of that. There's easier routes. But like easier routes doesn't, it mightn't be as fulfilling. That's the thing.
And if you think about that, right, you have to be so careful when you're in that situation about who you take advice from,
Yeah.
right? Because a lot of people who love you don't want to see you suffer. Like I think
Stressed.
about it with my own kids. Like, how will I be when they're doing something that makes them uncomfortable? Your natural reaction is going to be stop doing it. Like don't do that to yourself. But when you're in the situation, you have to be really careful because you could easily start believe in the victim mentality that it's not you, it's the market, it's COVID, it's the financial crisis. Like you will never be short on excuses of why you didn't make it or what didn't go in your favor. At the end of the day, literally nobody cares because it's like you just hit on it there. It's looking back and saying, did I or did I not do it? And I think growing up, like I love sports, loved playing sports. We played together. And I just like, once I became a teenager, just stopped trying, and a few things didn't go my way. I didn't grow as much as you guys, I wasn't like the quickest anymore. And I felt like I had some skills or could have been good, but I just stopped applying myself because all of a sudden it got really hard on the field, or I was dropped from the team, or I became, a bench warmer. And so quickly that became like, oh, that's not for me, or I could never do that. And it's such a that's just one thing I can think of randomly, like regret, because even though it was like just small stuff, football, hurling, soccer, like there's always a regret of not seeing it through where it could have taken me. And seeing our peers then go on and like do great things. And like I often wonder, like even if I could have never made it to where they did they just have that mindset earlier than I did, that they were going to apply themselves, they were going to find a way, and they were going to get through. And that's why I think that it's so important that you keep trying things, because you never know what's going to be your thing, especially when you're younger, especially when you're trying to find your way. And you have to be open to finding new things, because you never know what's going to ignite it. It sounds like for you, it was that creative gene was just ignited within
Which,
you.
man, didn't exist. You knew me from school. Like, it didn't exist, really. Well, maybe it was dormant or that, but it didn't really, like, until I went to Toronto, it didn't activate. Like, I'd always say I came back a different man, but that was one of the big things. And like,
But you were never afraid. You were never afraid to try things. Like I remember when we were like 11 or 12, you were going to be a DJ. I remember being up in your house and we were like spinning decks. And like, I always remember you as being someone who was, you weren't like marching to the regular beat that everyone else was. Like you were willing to kind of go out on your own. I don't know if that was something that you really thought much about, or if it was just natural to you. But you always struck me as someone who was not afraid to go their own way.
Yeah, like I think that kind of probably goes back to that bit, like of a higher tolerance probably for risk is the best, even when it like seems silly, kind of almost to do. Like I think it's the same with the bodybuilding. Like what I realized, like because we're a limited energy system. We only have so much energy to invest in anything. So you kind of want to do something that's going to reap some reward. And I was so much all in on bodybuilding, man. I literally wanted to be Mr. Olympia, all that. But like, I came to like the horrific realization that I think all the will in the world, like when you just don't have I did not have the genetics, like, like, and I mean really subtly, like bone structure wrong. I like to be really good. You can still go and you can maybe compete like in a national show and do well and stuff like that. But I didn't want that. And then just backing off like that was kind of another big life change. That was the same time when I moved to Canada. Because obviously when you're living out of hostels, it's hard to eat 400 grams of protein a day.
Yeah, but again, like the bodybuilding, the DJ, like whatever it was, you went for it, you went all in. Now it's writing, it's more creative, it's like the psychology part. Like, I think there's a balance in life between accepting you've reached your ceiling. Like with the bodybuilding, you had reached your ceiling of how far you could take it. So there's probably a piece that comes with that as well, that you had taken it as far as you could, and now it's time to do something else. And I think if you're afraid to stop something, you should ask yourself that question: have I
Yeah,
reached
that's a
the
brilliant way to
heights
think.
that I can reach? And if you haven't, then I think it should be a red flag that you might regret this decision if you stop.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at stuff. And I think that's a good way to test as well if you still kind of want it. Like, because
Yeah.
have I done that? And if not, why? Like,
And if not,
is there
why?
more to go?
Yeah, is there more to go? Because maybe you just need to change your approach slightly. You know, maybe you need, like, sometimes I find I get invigorated by making a slight tweak to how I do things. Because you can go, hit the brick wall, you step back, take a few days off, read a book, talk to a few people. Something just comes into your head and you're like, let me try that. All of a sudden, you've like a whole new lease of life on things again. You've given yourself the break and allowing yourself, I think, the possibility that you're going to quit or that it's not going to work out. Like there's several times I've lost track of how many times I was going to quit this or how I was going to stop. And I had it all lined up in my head. The excuses I was going to tell myself, the reasons why it didn't work, it was perfect. It was all like made sense. But there was something that just didn't feel right about stopping. And
Yeah.
it was, I think that's what keeps you coming back, keeps you coming back. And I just think that, and I keep saying it, and even to my own guys as well, momentum is everything.
Yeah.
Like build momentum. It's so hard. It's so hard to do. If you imagine the snowball analogy, you know, you're rolling, you're rolling, you're rolling, and all of a sudden it's bigger than you. You know, the main thing is don't let that snowball come back on you. You know, don't
Yeah.
take a backward step. Make a little bit of progress every day, no matter how small it feels. For me, it's like when things aren't going my way, do I still get up, shave, put the suit on, come into the city, put myself in the ring,
Yeah.
and even though I'm not feeling it or whatever, just show up, man. Like just
Yeah.
show up, just keep going.
Yeah. I've that sometimes, like, even about the gym, like, where even if I don't want to train, like, I'll make myself just even drive into the gym. And if I still don't want it, then I can drive home.
That's
But it's
great.
because
Yeah.
that's the hardest part. When
Yeah.
you get in there, it's grand, but it's that inertia. It's that kind of like pulling you back. But even to go back, man, to the momentum, because I think momentum is such a fascinating thing. Like, I think we've already talked about Cork and the hurling, but I think that is the most obvious example of a momentum shift. They lost momentum and Tipperary capitalized on it. But like momentum is really difficult to define. Like, because what my momentum is going to be probably so much different from yours, and it's bringing in so many different factors. There's luck involved, 100%. You know, it could be 30-40% of your momentum is luck. It's just right at the right time something is happening. You've seen it so much in that hurling match where the ball just happened to fall into the square of where Tipperary is, and there was a guy ready there with the hurl. Now, but there's also, you know, an intelligence of being ready in that moment, you know, prepared, and have the awareness of what's going around. There's like a huge psychological thing around momentum, because you know, one thing can off-rail it. Maybe it's, and it could be something minor. Maybe it could be, you know, a deal goes, or you know, you could have did better with a client, and you're thinking, oh, you kind of eat you. But like, what are what's the inroads there, the principles of momentum with you? Like, or have you kind of thought about it, like, or have you a feeling of what they are?
I think it's doing small things really well and doing them effectively. We all have things that we're naturally good at that just come easy to us. And it's different for you, what's different for me, what's different for whoever you bump into on the street. But I think whatever that small thing is, that you do. Like if I wake up in the morning, I have a list of things to do. There's something it brings you a lot of peace if you can check off something. For me anyway, if I can cross something out, and even though there's 20 things to do or there's a few bottlenecks in what you're doing, at the end of the day, if you can check, I got that done, that done, that done, and it's those 3 to 5 things that need to get done every day that really just help you get through a hard time. I think having more short-term goals as well when you're trying to build momentum is really helpful. Like,
Yeah.
it's not about what you're going to be in 6 months or a year. It's about how you're going to feel going home on Friday, right? Like, what could make this week a good week, and mapping that out and hitting those, and then going
So
back.
mapping out like the week, like, so you're looking, okay, what's the 3 or 4 things here I need, like, that will really accelerate my week?
What are the 3 things I need to nail this week?
Wow, okay, I like
So it
that
could be a
one, yeah.
pitch, it
Yeah.
could be a meeting, it could be, can I block out my calendar and force myself to do 50 calls? And if I can do those 3 things, all of a sudden it's like you're looking up the mountain, but you don't want to look to the top because it's too far. It's too intimidating. So it's like, can I get to that base camp? Okay. I don't climb mountains, but this is like in my.
Not
But,
me.
but can I just look up a little bit?
Yeah,
I'd say, all right, that's not so high.
yeah,
Okay, I can do that. And then all of a sudden, like if you, that's the only way I can think about momentum is chopping that mountain up into bite-sized pieces where you can get to a base camp every night, and you're not going backwards, you're going forwards. All of a sudden, you can feel the weight of all the effort, and you look back over a month or 6 months, or like I'm in year 8 of this business now, and you can just, it wasn't like that straight line. It was a lot of this,
yeah,
like I've explained, up, down. But generally, if you look at the trend, from where you were 6 months ago, from where you were a year ago, like, you can't help but see that growth and feel that inside you. And now all of a sudden you've hit a certain amount of base camps that there's no going back, or checkpoints, or whatever you want to
yeah,
call them. And that's in the tank now. It's there.
yeah,
So you've already gone through that. You've proven you can do it. You've proven that you have what it takes to do that. So why can't you do this next thing?
yeah. Yeah, I really like that advice, because I think that's something everyone that's listening could do. Is 3 things I want to nail this week. Like, what's the 3 what's the 3 things that are really going to move the dial?
Exactly.
And it can be professionally, it can be personally, it can be in
Anything.
anything.
Yeah. Like, bring the wife out for a date, go for dinner, right? That would mean, like, your personal life is going well.
Yeah.
Go spend like 4 good hours with the kids and turn off your phone and go to the playground and reconnect with them. And that fills your bucket up again for your personal life, which is so closely linked to your professional life. Because I firmly believe you can't have, when one is out of balance, the other suffers. Whether it's the professional is good or the personal is good, like, you need to have some sort of balance on both, I feel like, or else it's too hard. It's too hard to perform. It's too, there's too much nagging at your brain. And I certainly don't know how to get that right. All I do is just try that. I try similar to what you said about the regret. I think about it. I said, is there a chance I could regret this? And I try my best to correct course then. And whether it's not spending enough time on my business or whether it's not spending enough time with my family, both lead to regret. I think we can all agree your family is that's a different kind of regret. So
Yeah.
you don't want to not prioritize that first. But then, and if you're spending too much time with your family, you start thinking like, my job is to provide, my job is to support.
Yeah.
And maybe I need to take a little bit of, like, maybe the cost of that is not having some of these memories, or, getting up early, coming home late. Maybe you don't get to see them as much as you want, but there's a cost to everything. And it's like,
There is.
what's the cost, or what's the price you're willing to pay? Sometimes that price mightn't be worth it, and I think everyone has to ask themselves what it is, and everyone will have a different value on that.
And everyone will come to that juncture. in
Yeah.
life where, you know, there's either a sacrifice needed or you have to pay a toll. And like a lot of the time it comes on to health, because if you're not able to channel that stress, uh, like good luck. It just cripples people. You see people, you know, heart attacks in their 30s, 40s, just not being able to deal with stress, or then like turning to substances just to deal. Because when you're working in high pressure situations, like unless you're, you know, a psychopath, you're going to feel like some sort of adrenal, um, you know, like pain, and like just you're going to be so overstimulated all the time. You know, you're going to be hooked on dopamine pretty much, just trying to get to the next thing, without actually kind of stepping back.
And your body is, if you try to bottle all that up, right? Or say, I can do it. Like, I think we all have our limits. Like, I'll share a personal story that uh, in 2024, right? I'll never forget this day, February 15, 2024. I was sitting in a coffee shop in New York, and there was this deal that was a big commission, right? It was kind of one of those deals you ask about inflection points, or when do you know you make it. This was going to move the dial. It was going to change things for me. And I'd worked on it for 2 years, so 2 years solid. And it
Jeez.
was a big building. It was a $10 million deal. Like, enough, like more commission. I would have made more than I would have said in the previous 3 or 4 years in the business. So a lot riding on it. And it was just an extremely stressful time. So I showed up to the closing on February 15th. Buyer didn't show up. So we're all there. No buyer. Phone is off. It's not answering. 2 years of work. And I went to this coffee shop, and I sat down and I looked at my phone. I had 4 missed calls from my wife, Ashling. I was like, oh, Jesus, what's this? You know, I was thinking like, oh, did you forget to do this? Or, you know, something like that. So I pick up the phone, hey, and I could tell there was something like wrong with her voice. And she was like, where are you? Where are you? And I'm like, I'm here. I'm just in a coffee shop, blah, blah. She's like, I just got test results from your doctor. So I had been having these like stomach aches for like 3, 4 months. And again, like thinking about price or cost, I'm like, oh, this is just stress. This, you know, there's so much going on. Like, I had like credit card debt. I had, as I mentioned, like kids, house, trying to move this business
Responsibilities.
forward. Like, people were dependent on me, and I didn't realize it, but I was probably like internalizing so much that it wasn't even apparent to me. So I had these stomach aches, and I went and I did a colonoscopy or an endoscopy. And so Ashton calls me because I send my results to her. I don't even look at my health stuff. That's her department.
I
That's why I
don't want
send
to
it to her.
know.
I'm like typical like that. You know, I don't even want to know. It stresses me out
Yeah.
even thinking about health. So I send it over to her, and she's like, this test says you have malignant tumors in your stomach. And
Jeez.
the doctor wants to talk to you this afternoon. So I hang up the phone, and it
Fucking
was
hell,
like,
man. Where's
you
your
know, one of
head?
those epiphanies where you're just looking around and you're like, I wish I could go back to 5 minutes ago worried about this deal, you know.
Oh,
But it was a real lesson that you think you have problems, right? And sometimes we do, like real problems. But it's very important to keep a perspective on things, you
yeah.
know. Like 5 minutes before that, I was 34-year-old. I had New York at my feet. I was on my journey, young family. You know, I was in a very good place, but I couldn't even see it because all I was thinking about was this deal, or this person's dependent on me, or I'm messing this up, or what if I fail, and all these, I suppose, narratives you tell yourself. And so all of a sudden I was landed with this, and the doctor confirmed I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, so I had cancer in the stomach that was
Jesus
early
Christ.
stages, thankfully. But I went home that day, and it just felt like that was like ground zero of
Say.
your personal life is now falling in on top of your professional life. You know, there's no certain way forward, and you can't do anything really but just stop what you're doing and reflect. So you go through a period of getting that news. The next morning, I just remember waking up, looking in the mirror, and be like, "This can't be real. Like, this is
Yeah.
not real. Like, That's not like. That's not what I have here, surely." But sure enough, it was. Thankfully, you know, after a few weeks of being going through, all the scenarios in your head, it was determined that it was totally treatable.
Oh, thank
I
God.
I
Yeah.
was going to be fine, and there was a real path forward. So, in terms of perspective, it was just one of those points in life where it was like real estate stuff or business stuff it's all trivial, right? When you
Yeah.
think about it, you're going like because you're trying your best, you're doing what you can, and sometimes that's all you can do. If you want real problems, then it's when God forbid your health, or even worse in my head, and this is how I was making myself feel better. Thank God it's not my kids. Thank God it's not someone else. Because when
Yeah.
you're in that situation, you can probably think about yourself in different ways. You would always take that bullet rather than have someone else, one of your loved ones, have it. Because when it's you, you actually don't stress about it as much for whatever reason, or at least I didn't, because it was like I knew I felt good, I knew I was going to be fine. But I could imagine if it was happening to someone else, I
Yeah. It's
couldn't be
even less
certain that they were
controlled.
okay.
Yeah. Like you
So
can control your emotions around it and your thoughts around it, but when it's happening to another, you can't. And like that's the kind of worry that it's going to cripple them or that they're in pain, even like psychologically with it, you know?
exactly, and you want to carry that for people. Like I just wanted to be, I carried it, and I look got good news, took a course of action for treatment. My wife was just amazing. Like it's really like shows the importance of a partner and someone who loves you.
Yeah,
But
but
like
that's
they can
partner.
carry you through those times. 2 months later, I closed that deal, and like I got paid the big commission that I was waiting for. It was bittersweet because I had like in my head thought about this day that I was going to close that deal, and I always thought that it was going to change my life. I was going to be this different person because you put it up on a pedestal. It was the most anticlimactic thing ever, but at the same time, I felt like I'd won the lotto because the deal got done. I was getting my treatment. I could feel, and we go back to momentum again. All of a sudden now, like from being like stuck down on your ass to just like, okay, can I got bad news. What am I going to do about it? Can I get some treatment? Yes, I can. All right. So could this be worse? Of course it could. Am I going to be able to move forward? Yes. What can I do to close this deal? Get a new buyer, find a new buyer, close the deal. All of a sudden, again, it mightn't be over the course of a day, but there's 3 or 4 months of check, check, check. We're
Yeah.
back at it. We're back building momentum. And you don't look back. You hit another checkpoint. You're like life can throw cancer at you. It can throw diseases. It can throw curveballs that you
It
might.
will, more than likely.
Yeah, and it
No.
will. All of us, right? You're
Yeah.
going like that's my story. Someone else might have another story. And someone said it to me, and it's the truest thing ever. If you could throw down your problems with someone else's problems, you'd pick up your own problems every day of the week because you, you have what you have, right? And there's good and there's bad, but ultimately the price that you pay to get something good is going to be worth it. And I think that I just bring that up because you hit on that about stress and handling it in your body, and it's a real thing.
Man,
And
it's a real thing.
I really think that like at 34 or 35, I got that, and that was one of the price or a price that I had to pay for maybe going too all in or maybe put myself under too much pressure. And you never know, but like you have to make changes then at that point that you can't keep doing what you're doing if it's making you sick or if it's making you not live. So like you make changes again. You create new systems. You try to find more balance in your life. You make sure that now, maybe I take that bit better care of myself. Maybe your nutrition improves. Make sure you work out, whatever it is. But you have to listen to that, or else what good are you if you're just washed up, burnt out, can't provide?
Yeah, because then you can do nothing. So like it's you have to look after that. But like see, stress is so kind of invisible sometimes because it's not like something growing out of the
Yeah,
side of your head. It's scrunching inside. So it's like finding them ways and to find it in a way that's still like it's not counterproductive because yes, alcohol will relieve stress, but it's not going to have it's going to come back worse with the hangover, and then it's going to, you don't want to get it into like a problem then. But like I think with females they'll internalize so much more, and males kind of externalize. But I think no one has cracked the code of like under pressure. Like, what is the where's the valve to let all that stress out? And I think like some stress you need. It's the thing that's motivating you to actually do something. Eustress to call it, but yeah, like man, geez, I'm just so happy to hear that. Yeah, that's all good. I didn't realize that, but and all good since like follow check or
Yeah, thanks,
pick
man.
up
Yeah,
since.
it's all good. I got 12 months clear under my belt. So they take a look at me now once a year, just make sure everything stays that way. But in some ways, it's like, it's almost a blessing because I'm now being looked at under a microscope once a year. So you'd
Yeah,
imagine they'll stay ahead of things. So I really do feel grateful and blessed that it worked out the way it did. You never want to get that news, but you do learn again that you can withhold things, and I think it adds into this grit, resilience, survival, whatever you want to call it. Bad stuff is thrown at you. You will find a way, and it's not
yeah,
always easy. And it might look easy to other people, but I guarantee you it's not, and I guarantee everyone is paying their dues in some way. But yeah, no, I
yeah,
appreciate that, man, and it's it definitely gives you perspective on what we're doing here, and I think just feeds more motivation into making the time we do have here count, because that was a reminder. I'm not guaranteed anything. None of us are. None of us are getting out of here alive. Whatever chance you have, or whatever time we do have, really try and make the best of it. Maybe you won't do that every day, or some days like, oh, that was just one of those days. But I think it does overall give you a sense that like, just keep going forward, keep being grateful, keep trying your best, keep hanging there. All like cliche, but so true when you think about it as well.
yeah. I think definitely. I think it's so like to get that news on the day when the big deal is falling. There's really like a serendipity kind of aspect to it. That like it's almost whatever that higher power is, just like almost holding up a mirror and being like, deals will come and go, but like that one, they've one body, and like. And it's not even that, like, it's not looking after him, but like that dictates everything. It's like,
100%.
like the health, nature, whatever you want to call it. That is the great equalizer, that every man and woman, no matter on status, power, everything they get to, they still have a liver, and they still have a kidney, and all these organs are just like, different maybe constitutions from individual to individual, but everyone has them. And if they give up, everything is equal.
Got to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Before we finish up and all, I kind of want to go into, because like you'll meet so many characters there around. So when you had the Jared Epstein on, like very empath, I think kind of is his, really empathetic. You're going to have, you mentioned someone else. I think it was, he was kind of the mentor in the second place you went. I can't remember his name, but a very like really high EQ, very good emotional intelligence, able to read people really well. And then you're going to have like the hard closers, the kind of Gordon Geckos. I'll give you actually a funny story. When me and Kiwi were in Gary Corwin, when we were in Toronto, we did telesales. It was one of our first jobs there, which was, I don't know if it was even legal what we were doing, because it just seemed like the dodgiest company. But it was almost like the Yellow Pages, and you were calling people up and you were trying to sell them a subscription to the Yellow Pages. But it was like we were pretending to be Yellow Pages and we weren't. So like they had a script and all. So like kind of what you were saying earlier on, me and Kiwi got hired because of our Irish accents. They thought it'd be real novel, keep people on the phone, stuff like that. So like, as you know, it's kind of like you're ringing a bell if you get a sales. I don't think me and Kiwi got one sale. Like it was just, man. But this one guy, right? This one guy come in, Brian, and he was like in college. He'd sit down, real attitude on kind of on him and all that. He'd pick up the phone. Like we'd be calling hundreds of people a day and rejection. This guy could have like 6 sales in an hour and he'd walk out with just his commission. And he was real aggressive. It was like, do you ever see them videos online of the Indian scammers where they're like really aggressively like forcing a deal? But sorry, long way of going around. There's so many different like of salespeople almost. You have the empaths, really good at putting themselves in the other person's shoes, and that's like probably their superpower in negotiation or with the deal. EQ is being able to read like all the signals, probably knows when to go in hard, when to pull back. Then you're going to have that kind of like authoritative, that like hard closer, hard pusher, and everything in between. Like, what have you seen there across that whole real estate world that works best? Like, it's obviously going to be the situation dependent, but is there any themes or trends you would have seen across them different archetypes?
I think you summarized it well there, that there's every sort of character and personality trait. And that's the great thing about the business as well. You know, you can come from any walk of life and find your way in not just real estate, but generally more sales, right? Whatever you can do to be effective in influencing someone else's behavior, because that's what all sales is, right? Can you influence somebody to take action? And there's many different styles of doing it. Like, I often find it's actually not even, I used to think it was about knowing the answers, and I'd really prepare the night before a pitch, and I think in my head, if they say this, I'll say that. If they go left, I'll go right. And you're coming up with all these scenarios in your head. But then it dawned on me, it's not even about what I know. It's about what questions I ask. Because it's not, having the right answers is not really what it is. It's about understanding what makes this person across from you tick. So they, in my case, they have a property, they have a building. Great, right? The instinct when you're a broker who makes commission on a sale is push for the sale. But that mightn't be the best option here for that owner, right? The same way a GP or a doctor might listen to what you tell them and then diagnose what's going on. You need to almost take that advisor approach. And I think any salesperson who steps back and really asks questions, who, what, why, when, those type of questions that get the other side talking, all of a sudden it's very clear what's going on in this person's life. It could be this person has no money. They need to sell the building to pay their bills. This person's going through a divorce. They need to settle up their estate. But unless you really go and, or this person's not motivated to do anything, they're just pumping me for information.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, and who sells who in that scenario, right? So don't be sold. At least have them understand that they're dealing with a pro here, and they're also dealing with, you said it, empath, right? I empathize with the other person's situation because that's what I do. I'm into relationships. I like connecting with people. I think that's what helps me sell more, is that I'm genuinely interested in understanding what their scenario is. Maybe I'll be able to help them. Maybe I won't. I'll tell them if I can't. And I think people are very much disarmed when someone who has all the incentive in the world to sell or to take their building and try sell it and says, no, it's not the right move for you. That's not going to solve your problem. You're going to trust that person.
Yeah.
You know, if you think
That's
about
a long-term trust, isn't it?
it's a
Like, so when
long-term
it is
trust.
the right time.
It's the plumber who comes out to your house. You've got a toilet overflowing or sink that's flooded, and they say, oh, it's just this. Don't worry about it. You don't need to change everything. Just twist this here, do that. That's all it is. Don't even worry about paying me. You'll have a job sometime that I'll actually charge you for. It's the same mentality in our gig or in sales. It's like, oh, wow, he told me not to sell. It wasn't the right time. In 6 months or in 12 months or in 2 years, when something's going on in my life that things have changed and now I do need to sell, who are you going to call? You're going to call the person who shot you straight, person you trust, and the person who acted like an advisor and not just thought about that commission. And it goes right back to what you were saying about not chasing the money, more chasing the process. And my process is, how many relationships can I make over my career? And those relationships will ultimately make me money or make a return for my team. But it starts with, how can I help them? How can I add value? How can I put them before me? And that all comes from asking questions. So in sales, I think that's one thing that I've learned is it's not about knowing every answer or knowing that. It's about really being able to understand what motivates a person.
Yeah, I think that hits the nail on the head, because I think I was so like that as well. I'd be like studying the pitch deck on, like trying to understand every angle, but it's you know, you're selling to the person, and it's understanding the person, not like them understanding the product or whatever it is. That's the critical crux there. So yeah, really interesting. on that, man. And I think it's like that sage advice, and I think it comes there from that time in the bullpen, that time going through, getting your stripes there coming up. So I think that's where you get that information from. Before we finished up, last question, man. I seen on you and Mitchell's Ripco when the link in your podcast. Like, New York just is so insane to me, because it was like a car park, and it was like near 10 million. Like, and obviously it's in a location where but how crazy is that market, like, out there, like, with the money that, like, some of these buildings or, like, sites and stuff can have? Like, is it at all-time highs? Is it peeled back? Like, where is that, like, market at the minute?
Yeah, listen, it's like, we're so lucky to be in New York, to get to do this job, right? Because when I was growing up, I looked at New York on TV, yellow cabs, tall buildings, lots of action. And to get to be here, being a part of it, and selling these types of buildings, I've nothing but gratitude for that. And I really do feel lucky. And I feel like the market, it comes up, goes down, goes sideways, but it's always New York, right? So there's always a level of demand. And sometimes, like, it could be like that, a parking garage or a piece of property, you're like, who's going to buy this? But lo and behold, somebody steps up. Even if it takes longer, even if it's not quite the pricing you thought, there's a level of demand here, a baseline demand. People want to be in New York. I think it's the lightning rod in the world for people, talent, capital, everything. It's all here. And there's something to that. I think if you were to think about it as a brand, like, New York City is a brand, right? We could be at home and we could see Yankees jerseys, or we could see the New York Knicks, and, like, we just grew up with that. We probably didn't think much of it. But that psychology of New York, I think it almost sells itself. We get in our own way a little bit over here. We've got some political headwinds that are tough, because it's making it a bit more difficult to operate as landlords. It's probably the same in Ireland from what I read. I know there's been a bit of a crackdown on landlords, and I think it's just ultimately, is housing a human right that people are entitled to? Or is it an entrepreneurial,
Business.
economical endeavor? And I think that's sometimes where there's a bit of a mismatch between what is good for the public and what's good for the private. So we deal with all of that. But ultimately, high level, I would say it's New York. It's the best real estate city in the world, in my opinion. I just think it has it all. People want to be here. They want to invest here. And thankfully, we get to make it happen.
Yeah, well, definitely, and hopefully, them deals keep on coming. Hopefully, next time I'm chatting to you, it'll be up to 60 or 70 anyway, man. But look, man, huge congrats on everything you've achieved over there. Like, I just fascinated there with your story. Obviously, we've been good friends, so even to have kind of, like, if we see each other out in the pub, we're only catching up, to actually go into your story and to go a bit deeper, like, than say when we're just chatting. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. So thanks so much for giving up your time, and huge kudos, man, for all you've achieved and are probably going to go on to achieve as well.
Same to you, my man. Thanks so much for having me on.
Cheers, man. Thanks a million. Sound
Cheers,
out.
bud. Thanks.